So welcome to this final workshop of the year, Keeping Motivation Effective in Lessons. My name is Alison Bell from ASWIM UK, and thank you for joining me today. Hopefully you'll find, you'll go away with something new today, or thinking about something new, and especially about motivation. So what we're going to look at, let me have a look at the outcomes for you. We're going to explore motivation and what that means, and how do we motivate ourselves. We're going to look at how we can add learner ownership into our lessons to create motivation. We're also going to look at what best practice can we use for assessment and attainment. And again, that is relevant to motivation. And how can we ensure learners are offered pathways? For me, that's another really good way of motivating your swimmers. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be using our chat function, which, depending on what device you are, quite often it's at the bottom there. And I've got Lorna with me today, who's going to kind of monitor the chat function as well. So the first thing I want us to think about is, what does motivation mean? So in the chat box, what I'd like you to do is just have a little type in there if you can. What does motivation mean for you? It can be anything you like. So let's see if you can write down something in the chat box for me. To be engaged in something or an activity, absolutely. Enjoy what I do, yeah. Focus learning is improved quicker than having more fun. So that's great. So sort of the word engagement and fun and sort of engrossed and that type of thing is coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this up on the slide for you. So have an incentive or a strong desire to do well or succeed in a pursuit. And what it needs to do for me, this is probably from my own personal opinion, is it needs to get you excited, and you need to kind of think, yes, I want to do that. So that's what we need to be looking at. So there's two types of motivation. And we've got intrinsic, outside influence. So that might be anything from using possibly the Swim Picks cards. So here it might be that the children, if they saw this, they might be excited about what is that group game going to be. So that in itself might motivate them, or they might really be looking forward to doing the end activity that you might be doing. It might be you as a teacher. It might be the games that you deliver within your class. It might be equipment that you've used, or this one I quite like, it's the coaching style that you use. And you need to think about, what style am I using, and is that motivating my swimmers? The intrinsic, and I think for me at the moment, self-influence, I think Adam Peaty is an excellent example of intrinsic motivation. I was watching an interview this week when he was taken out of Strictly, and he was asked a question about Mel Haddart, his coach, had asked at the end of a session, who's doing 3 more? And he replied instantly, I'll do 4. And that kind of just sort of shows, you could look at that from a lot of different ways, I suppose, but it is self-motivation. He wants to do it. And he wanted to know that when he stands on that block, he's done more work than anyone else standing on the block. So to me, that is a self-influence. It's what he wants to achieve. So looking at what motivates you as a teacher, you might sort of start to have a think about. So watching Adam Peaty swim, this is for me, and actually watching his dedication to when he was on Strictly, and also listening to his positivity in catching. It's kind of catching and helps positive mindset. So I know after I'd watched his BBC interview, I was actually really motivated myself, which was brilliant. And then I thought, when I was writing this for today, I was thinking, well, what self-influence do I have? And for me, and this is what I want you to sort of think about, for me, is I want to make a difference. So this has driven me over the last sort of 35 years of being in swimming, to making a fun, safe environment for young children to learn to swim. I was also a national coach for 9 years, and one of my things there was to improve world ranking for the squad that I was coaching. But that's got to come from within. So what I want you to do now in the chat box is, what motivates you? So what either outside influence do you have, or have you had? So that might be a teacher or coach that you used to have. So what makes you teach swimming? Okay, so open the chat box. So let's sort of just have a think about, if anything, it's just activity to get you thinking about what motivates you. Yeah, so we've got a life-saving skill that all children should have access to. Yeah, love the sport, providing all children with the opportunity to learn. So even that in itself, isn't it? If you love something, that's kind of your self-influence that comes out. If you're struggling with that, just think about, why do I teach swimming? It might even be the money. It might be that you love being with children. It might be that you teach special needs children. So yeah, we've got here the challenge, the children's diversity, my children to push my comfort zone, other professionals, helping other teachers, and in a passion to enable all people to learn a life-saving skill. Yes, love swimming. So what we need to do from here is we need to think about how can we motivate our learners in the lessons. And I've got 3 things that we are going to go into some breakout rooms. We're just going to go into 3. And room 1, so if you go into room 1, I want you to think about, what can you do to motivate your learners? What do you do within your lessons to make sure that they're motivated? Then how can this room 2 are going to look at, how can you encourage self-influence? So something about how they want to achieve. Now, one of the sort of challenges that I think we have as teachers is quite often that self-influence become very external, from parents wanting them to do things perfectly. So an example I was talking about this morning is a child was doing a dive, and they said to the teacher, I've got to do this perfectly. And the teacher said, why have you got to do this perfectly? They said, because my dad said I've got to do it perfectly. And the teacher gave a really good response and said, why don't you enjoy doing it? And that is where the motivation comes, because doing things perfectly cannot always be that motivational. So I hope that helps. So we need to think about that. And room 3, I want you to think about ownership, how you can encourage learners to be part of that lesson. So I'm going to give you an example of that. So when I teach artistic swimming, one of the things I do for motivation and ownership on the lesson is I always ask them what music they would like to swim to. And I do try and give them ownership on that. Because it wouldn't be very motivating if I make them swim to something that they don't want to do. So I hope that helps. If you can take a picture of that with your phones, that would be great. Lorna is going to put that in the chat box for you, so that we know, so you can see which room you're going. And just come back, just explore it and see if we can come back with 1 to 2 points for each of those when you come back. So each room's looking at one area. So I hope that was helpful, because I think sometimes just thinking about what motivates us can actually help us think about it once we go on to poolside. So who was in the, or is there someone in the extrinsic where what can we do to motivate our learners as a teacher? Is there someone there that could unmic and just give us a little bit of feedback of what you spoke about? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll do it, yeah.
Oh, Jason, you're a star, thank you.
We've come up with making sure your lessons are varied, so different ideas, keeping it interesting and fresh, so the kids come to the lesson kind of like looking forward to
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Because it's I often think about that. I mean, it is my artistic swimming group that keep me on my toes, I have to say. And I do think for them, they come for an hour and a half each week, which is, you know, it's quite a long lesson if you like, but it is about varying and doing different things to keep them interested. Yeah, so that's great. Anything else, Jason?
We talked about creating a culture where it's good to give things a try. So not being perfect, but just getting better every time you come.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And enjoy it, you know, come and enjoy it. Yeah, brilliant. Do you want to add anything else, or does anyone want to add anything to that? No, lovely. Okay, I think even those 2 points there, if we think about that as we start teaching, it will make a difference. So room 2, intrinsic. So this was how can we encourage self-influence? So this is how can we encourage our swimmers to want to do it? So who was in that room?
Yeah, so we don't have the cards, and the cards are a really good idea, but where I teach, we don't have the cards. So but what I decided to do was plan my sessions so that in my mind I had like my storybook in a mental thing. So what I would do is I would give the children, say, right, today maybe we're going to focus on backstroke, but I'd like to do log rolls or push and glides, and have a couple of options. So we said not necessarily for the warm-up, but for the contrasting activity, that we would give them a choice. So that like we do push and glides, or we do the log roll. Obviously some children are more confident in the push and glide, so they would favor the log roll. And you could actually just sort of have them at different levels. So you could have some doing the push and glide front and back, and then you could have some doing the sausage rollovers.
Yeah.
But it was just giving them the option, so that hopefully that if they stay engaged in the lesson, that we would then have an activity that the majority of the class would like. Or as you say, just like you got some with 1 float, 2 floats and no floats, you could vary it. But I think it was like having my own storybook. So changing my style. I mean, when you, as I was saying, when you're coaching teachers for 6 days a week, you're like, no, I'm drained. But because now I'm only doing it part-time, I can allow myself to have a little bit of chaos, and
Yeah,
and let myself have the fun as well, you know.
Yeah, it goes a long way as well. And you've kind of touched a little bit on ownership there, on allowing them to sort of choose. And I think with self-influence as well, things like pupil demonstrations, I think we underestimate how that might make them feel inside, I'd like to be picked. And once you get that desire, you've got them in the palm of your hands. So vary that around and allow them to be part of, you know, of what's going on. So thank you, Sue. That's brilliant. So who did ownership? So this one is one of my favourites, I have to say, when I'm teaching. So the group that did ownership, does anyone want to give some feedback on how we can do that?
Hiya.
Hello.
The children setting themselves targets, things that they actually want to improve on, whether it's a skill or a stroke.
Absolutely.
Giving them options of what equipment they're going to use, so whether it's a float or a woggle, and having choices of activities, so like an easier, a medium and a more challenging.
Yeah.
And also giving them the opportunity to have a go at that skill or activity in a following session, so that they can build their confidence from the previous one to try and delve into a challenging activity.
And isn't that so good, because then that gives them something that they want to do, and you're allowing them time to do it, which will motivate them to come next week if they can have another go. And I think it's, you know, and I think, Sue, what you said about when we do so much teaching, we end up like drained ourselves, and it becomes a little bit going through the motions, but we actually forget ourselves. We end up not enjoying teaching as much as when we actually sit back and go, actually, what do you want to do? You know, and I think that's really quite powerful. So yeah, so thanks. Share my screen with you just for a little while. So if you want to turn your cameras off, just for this next slide. So we've got, so we've talked about the types of motivation we can use. But a key factor that I found is having the learners motivated and engaged on what they're working towards, and that might be an award or a routine, as I say, when I do my artistic swimming, etc. Using kind of ticks on assessment sheets can be really motivating, even if it's half a tick or a number, just to engage and motivate those learners. And I think if they know what they've got to do to improve on an assessment process, then that becomes motivational. One of the key elements of teaching and coaching a fun environment is letting the learners be part of it, which we've just spoken about. So I just want you to go back into a breakout room, and just for a couple of minutes, and I want you to explore and listen to each other as to how you can make assessment and attainment motivating. So it could be like making sure when they get their certificates that's, you know, maybe someone shakes their hand and says well done. So there's lots of ways of doing that. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and then what we'll do, we'll kind of maybe if you just put your hand up if you want to share what you came up with. But I'll kick us off with assessment and attainment. One of the things I do is, as I've said before, is that I do quite often, if I can, COVID obviously is a little bit tricky, but shake their hand and say well done on passing your stage 2. And we do offer a picture which goes into the newsletter if they want that. And obviously you've got to have all the protection around the pictures, but that is quite nice. They kind of feel like they've sort of achieved something. So does anyone else want to give an idea of how you can make this motivational? Okay, Angela.
Yeah, I was just saying that particularly I'm thinking of pre-squad. So if they've achieved a big swim, or if they've all done a good length and worked hard, and I get the parents, I acknowledge them and tell them what they've done and get them to give everyone a round of applause. And
yeah, round of applause.
Yeah, or anytime if they, you know, whatever stage, but if they've all done well and it's all going, you know, nice, peachy, whatever, then yeah, come on, give them a round of applause. They've worked really hard at that. And, you know, even if it's a bit not that great, but
it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, of course. And that needs recognising.
Yeah, and it could be their best, you know, but it is their best, isn't it? And we shouldn't judge that to perfection, because that isn't what learning's about. Learning is about being in a safe environment, that it's okay to get it wrong, but we've done their best, which is worth a round of applause.
I still think it needs recognition. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah, anyone else want to share what you do or what an idea? Sue, have you got your hands?
I haven't got my hand up, but what somebody in our room actually said that they ring a bell, which is fantastic.
Oh, okay. So is that you? I've got you down as 107277.
Sorry, that's me, Karen. Sorry, thanks,
Hi,
Sue.
Karen.
Yeah, hi, sorry. At Yeovil, yeah, we've got a bell on poolside, and I'm fairly new to their team here, and the kids love it. When they move up a level, get their level signed off, they go and ring the bell, and everybody in the
love that.
Doesn't matter, you know, all the coaches, lifeguards, they all clap, and that's great.
Yeah.
Very
I
nice.
absolutely love that idea. That is brilliant. Thank you for that. And I think what's come out of that, it is about recognition, isn't it, of the assessment. And I think it's really important as well for those children that perhaps don't quite pass something, that we recognise what they have passed. Yeah, does that, rather than that whole fail thing, you know, what have they passed? You know, you've passed 6 out of the 10 outcomes. Well done, round of applause, ring the bell, or whatever it might be, you know. So yeah, brilliant. Right, last little bit for you to think about. So I'm just going to share my screen. So I think this is another one for us to sort of think about, learning new skills and offering pathways. So question for you, are you a talent spotter? I'm always looking at swimmers and thinking they'd be a good diver or a good artistic swimmer. And I often try and sow seeds with parents and with the swimmers that that's something they might want to think about. So maybe as a teacher, we could try new skills with them as contrasting activities, you know, step out of the kind of mold a little bit. And there's lots of pictures here, you know, where you can try basic activities. I want to just talk to you a little bit about water polo. Is so good even for non-swimmers, such a great activity. In our schools pack with Swim Picks, we actually have a whole set of water polo sort of broken down practices, and in our red break it down book we have got the practices and teaching points that lead you to play a game of mini polo, and that could either be shallow end or deep end. So that's kind of something about just giving them a kind of an opportunity to find out what else there is about swimming. So just using the chat function, write down what you do to encourage, or how do we let people know, or our learners know, that there's other things going on. So just have a little think and just write something in the chat box. I tend to do it a bit word by mouth, verbally. But yeah, so we've got here, when children learn a skill in swimming and develop as a swimmer. Yeah, so that would be great. So I'm assuming you mean verbal on that one, Karen. You could do that. Any other ideas? I don't know if any of you have got links with clubs at the pools that you teach at, or whether you know, there's water polo clubs, artistic swimming clubs, snorkeling clubs, competitive clubs, open water near you. Sometimes it's useful to kind of start looking to sort of see where the new activities are. Sort of, so near me, we quite often have open water, so there's a place where they can go and do boating, etc. So I might sort of let them know about that. Yeah, so talent spot, I speak to parents, well done. Oh, someone does diving and synchro, brilliant. That's great. Once children reach stage 7, we email club links. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, so that's, again, you can take that away for you, but I do think it's really important that we do motivate our swimmers to stay in the sport, even if it's to have a little bit of fun. So thank you for that. So just lastly, so I hope today's been useful, even if sometimes I think, I keep using the word myself at the moment, reset. And I think sometimes if we reset ourselves, we have looked at exploring motivation and what that is. We've talked about learner ownership into our lessons, best practice for assessment and attainment, and how can we offer those pathways. And I think all of those 4 outcomes do end up leading to motivation. I think more importantly for us as teachers, to keep us kind of there. So I hope you've found that useful today, and thank you for your time and energy. It's been lovely meeting you all. I don't know if any of you do know, but Swim England have got their national conference. It's Swim England Teacher and Education Conference on Monday the 29th of November. I'm actually doing a workshop, workshop 3, from 11 till 12:30. You can buy tickets from the Swim England website. And my subject is on there is Swim England School Swimming and Water Safety Charter Foundation. So if you're not sure what that is for schools that are teaching children with special educational needs and or disabilities. And they have some awards, and we've also got Swim Picks to match that. So we're going to be exploring what's in those awards, how we can use Swim Picks. And I'm actually lucky enough to have Lorna with me, who's very experienced in teaching children with special educational needs. So you can still get tickets, I believe. And I do also believe that if you can't make it, you can join up and you can get recordings of the sessions. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to stop sharing now.